Hey guys, in this new video of the TypeScript crash course, this is what we are going to do. We are going to set up TypeScript in Node.js so we can write our Express API using TypeScript. We are going to create and customize the TypeScript config file. We are going to install custom types for Node and Express. And then we're going to implement a really simple API, just the get and post endpoints to get a list of tasks and also another endpoint to create a new task. Remember to subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. Okay, in order to create our Node.js API using Express, first we are going to create a new folder. We're going to open a folder and create a new one. Let's call this folder task API TS, and we're going to open that folder in our Visual Studio Code. Okay, first I'm going to open a terminal here, and I'm going to install TypeScript globally. npm install -g, I'm going to install this globally, TypeScript. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call it source. And I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it app.ts. And now we are going to be able to use TypeScript here. For example, count of type number equals to 0. And if I run tsc, this is the transpiler for TypeScript or the compiler for TypeScript. We can run it and we can say tsc source/app.ts, and this is going to generate a JavaScript file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the TypeScript config file. I'm going to delete this. Okay. I'm going to create the TypeScript config file, and I'm going to execute tsc ---- init, and this is going to create the default tsconfig. The only things that we're going to change here, the important things are the target, for example. This is the ECMAScript version that we want to transpile our TypeScript code. And we are going to select ECMA 6, for example, but we can select ES3, that is the default one, ES5, ES 2015, and we can also select the other ones that we can see here. Okay, and another important setting here is going to be the outdir. This is going to be the place where the JavaScript file are going to be generated. So I'm going to create a dist folder for that. And I need to select the root dir. That is going to be the source directory that we already created. And I'm going to select the module resolution as Node. Okay, I'm going to give that. And now I'm going to initialize the dependencies file or package.json file running npm init -y. And this is going to generate the default package.json. Okay, and now we are going to install some dependencies. We are going to install Express, npm install Express. And we're going to install some dev or development dependencies. npm install -d. With the -d, we say to npm that we are going to install these dependencies for development. ts nodemon add types types/node and add types/express and add types. Okay, now we have the dependencies that we need, and we are also going to install UUID. We're going to use this library to generate identifiers for the tasks that we're going to create as part of this API. So npm UUID, and we're going to also install the type for this library. So npm install -d. This is going to be also part of the development dependencies. Add types/UUID. Okay, and now we have everything we need to get started working on our API. So I'm going to remove this. First, let's check that we can generate the JavaScript files. I'm going to add some scripts here. I'm going to add a start script. It's going to be node dist/app.js. This is going to be the command to run the application. I'm going to add a dev script to run the server in our development environment. And in this case, we're going to use nodemon, and we're going to use our TypeScript application, app.ts. And then I'm going to create another one that's going to be the build, that is going to allow us to transpile the code. And if we run that from the command line, esc-p period, this is going to be watching the changes in our app.ts file. So now, as we can see, we have our app.js file within the dist folder, and this is the ES6 version of this TypeScript code. And the way that we set what is the version that we're going to transpile our TypeScript code is within this configuration here, that is the target. If I change this for ECMAScript 5, for example, let's do that. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove the entire folder, and I'm going to run the command again. And now, as we can see, we have ECMAScript 5 code transpiled from this TypeScript code. Okay, let's remove this. And let's start working on our Express API. Okay, first I'm going to import the Express dependencies. Express, and I'm going to install some more dependencies. Application, request and response from Express. And I'm going to create the Express application. So here you can say that this is going to be an Express application. And here I initialize the Express application. I forgot to add a comma here. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to add a space. Okay. And here I'm going to create a really simple get endpoint, just to quickly check that everything is working as we expect. So let's say tasks, and I'm going to add the arrow function that is going to be the handler of this get request. And here I'm going to receive the request of type request and the response of type response. These classes are imported here from Express on the first line of this file. Okay, and now I'm going to return response.send, and just I'm going to send hello. Okay, and now I'm going to add a listen to start the server, listening on port, let's say 4000. And I'm going to add a console log showing a simple message: server up and running. Okay, I'm going to run npm run dev. And now if I go to localhost 4000, I get /tasks. I get the hello message that I added here. And we get the console log where that says that the server is up and running. I'm going to create a controller, so this controller is going to allow us to get a list of tasks, and also is going to allow us to create new tasks. So I'm going to create a couple of folders here. One of them is going to be the model, where I'm going to create a task class, task.ts, and here I'm going to create my class, export class task, and I'm going to create a constructor, and here I'm going to set these variables, these properties: private ID, this is going to be a string, private name, this is going to be a string as well, and completed, that is going to be a boolean that is going to say if the task was completed or not. Okay, really simple class, 3 attributes, just to do a really simple API. And I'm going to create another folder where I'm going to add a controller that is going to contain an array of tasks and is going to have 2 methods, one to return all the tasks and another one to create a new task. So let's create that class. It's going to be the class task controller.ts. So export class task controller, and it's going to have a constructor, and let's create a private attribute here that is going to be a list of tasks. This is going to be an array of tasks, task array, Here I need to import task from, and I need to go to our model folder to access the task class definition. And this constructor, the only thing that it's going to do is going to initialize the tasks as an empty array. Okay, and now I'm going to create a couple of methods here. The first one is going to be a getter to get all the tasks. So get tasks, that is going to return a task array, and this is going to return our tasks. Let's do this, and this, and this. Okay, this is kind of a convention where when you have a private attribute, you put an underscore before its name. And we're going to also create another method that is going to be public. So we can call it from our app.ts file to create a new task. We are going to create a post method, and we're going to create a new task from that method. Okay, let's call it create task. And we're going to pass just two values, the name of the task, that's going to be a string, and the completed attribute, that is going to be a boolean. Okay, and here we just create a variable of type task, and we create a new task, and we pass the name and the completed values. And what I'm missing here is the identifier. So I'm going to import actually the UUID dependency, import UUID, actually before as UUID. You can use UUID using different versions of identifiers. In this case, I'm going to use before, from, and this is going to be UUID that we already installed here. Okay, let's go back to the controller. And what we need to do here is just call the UUID function, UUID, and this is going to generate a string with the identifier of the task. It's actually a unique identifier. Okay, now what we are going to do is we're going to push this new task in our array. And we're going to return the task. Return task. And I'm going to set the task type because we are returning a task once we create this new resource. Okay. And that's it for the controller. And let's go back to our app.ts. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new instance of our controller. First, we need to import the task controller. Import task controller from here we need to go to controller, task controller, const task controller equals to new task controller. Is going to infer the type, but let's add it explicitly, task controller. Okay. And here on our get method, the only thing that we need to do here is we're going to use the task controller and we're going to call the method tasks. And this is going to return all the tasks. And now we're going to create another method here that is going to be the post method, so we can add tasks to that collection. We post, we receive the request, we return the response, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the structuring. So I'm going to receive a JSON payload in the request that I'm going to receive the name and the completed attributes from the request that body. Request that body. Here we go. And now I'm going to create a new task using the controller. It's going to be task of type task that I'm going to import. Yes, here I imported that class. And it's going to be the task that is going to be created using the create task method from the task controller. So I'm going to pass the name and the completed values. And here I'm going to return the task that I just created. Task. Okay, let's test this. So if I execute the get operation here, I'm going to get an empty array. So let's create a couple of tasks. I'm going to create first the task 1. I forgot to add express to use express.json. And now we should be able to run this. And I need to return res.send and the task that we want to return. Okay, and now I'm going to run this, and now we get the task. And I don't know what we are not getting the completed attribute. Let's see what's going on. Completed. Let's run this again. And now we get the identifier created with UUID, the task name that is task 1, and completed as false and here we get the same task that we just created. Let's add another one. Let's say task 2, completed as true. We get the identifier, the task name that we just assigned, and the same for the completed attribute. And if we get all the tasks, we get the task 1 that we previously created, and now the task 2. Okay, so that's pretty much how you can use TypeScript on the server side. So here we added some custom types for Express and Node. Thank you for watching, and I see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.